again from hypnosisessex.com, and in this video what I want to show you is how you can begin to change your thoughts and beliefs about what is causing problems for you in your life. Many people have limiting thoughts or beliefs about what's going on or what's happened in their lives, and because they believe them, it creates feelings of anxiety or depression and stuck states. So what I want to do in this video is to begin to explore how you can begin to change those thoughts. And it's not just, and the thing I want to really get into is not just the thoughts that are the problem. It's the fact that you believe the thoughts that are the problem. Now I know that sounds a little bit weird, but nevertheless, that's the case. And to start off, what I'd like to do is to just do a little thought experiment with you. So what I'd like you to do is hopefully that you're able to do this right now and follow along with what I'm about to suggest. And I want you to do it to the best of your ability. I want you to suspend any disbelief, and I just want you to use your imagination. Now, this is not hypnosis or anything weird. This is just you using your imagination. So what I'd like you to do right now is to follow along with me and use your imagination as best as you can. I want you to really believe in what I'm telling you and use your imagination. And so what I'd like you to do is to imagine that in one of your hands you have a juicy, ripe lemon. And as you look down at that lemon in your hand, you can see the bright yellow colour of it, maybe the sort of little pimples that are on the skin. And in your hand you can begin to feel the waxy texture of the lemon in your hand. And as you sort of give a little squeeze or whatever, I want you to notice the kind of little spongy, rubbery kind of feel to it as well. And then in the other hand, I'd like you to imagine having a sharp knife and carefully cutting that lemon in half. And as you cut that lemon in half, notice the burst of aroma that goes up your nostrils, the citrusy smells that come up your nostrils. And perhaps you can even begin to feel some of the juice trickling between your fingers. And then as you look down at that juicy, ripe lemon, I want you to pick up one of those halves of the lemon and see it in your hand. Imagine it there in your hand. And looking at the segments that have been cut by the knife. And then I want you to imagine bringing that up to your mouth and taking a bite of it and taste that citrusy flavour hitting your taste buds, hitting your tongue. And as you do that, I want you to notice that you've increased your salivation. For most people, if they followed along correctly, they've increased the saliva in their mouth, that their mouth has actually begun to water. Now, there's no lemon there, and yet it's caused a physical change in your body. Just using your imagination, just by changing your thoughts, just by thinking of something, you have caused a change in your physiology. And this is going to become really important in a moment, because it's our thoughts and our belief of those thoughts that create all these changes in our body, that create the rapid heart rate, that create the fear, the anxiety, create the feelings of depression. It's not the other way around. It's our thoughts that do it. And here's the interesting thing. If you'd gone through that process and you didn't have an increase in saliva, what that means is you didn't believe what I was asking you to imagine, which is perfect, because that means it's not the thought that you think that is the problem, it's the fact that you believe in it. And so for those of you who did increase your saliva, that caused a physical change in your body because you believed it. You believed what you're imagining. For those of you who didn't have an increase in saliva, that's great, because that also proves that that you can think those thoughts, but unless you believe them, it won't have an effect. And that's where we're getting to next. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to begin to start thinking about some of these thoughts. I want you to identify some of these thoughts that you think are responsible for your anxiety or your depression or your sadness or your stress. I want you to identify those thoughts, because when you can identify them, then you can begin to change them. So the first step is to start to contemplate and just start thinking about the thoughts that you have that you are blaming for your anxiety or depression or your current situation in life. And just identify those thoughts or beliefs. And what we're going to do, we're going to run them through 4 questions. Now, I'd love to tell you that I'm really clever and I came up with these 4 questions, but I didn't. They come from a work of a woman called Byron Katie, who I highly recommend that you check her out. She has a number of videos, but she's got loads of books and she does courses. So go and buy her books. They're really, really good and they're well worth looking at because they will help as well. But the crux of it is these 4 questions, which she calls the work. And the first question, when you've identified whatever the limiting belief is that you have, is it true? So the first question you ask yourself when you've identified this limiting belief is it true? The second question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? The third question is, how do you react when you believe that? Thought. And the fourth question is, who would you be without that thought? And we're going to go through in a moment how we actually do this. So let's, as an example, let's say the problem is he doesn't love me, right? So what we then do is, that's the key phrase. And so we ask question 1, is that true? Now, you don't just take the first answer that pops in your head, not that sort of knee-jerk reaction. What I want you to do is I want you to contemplate it. It's almost like a meditative process. It's like meditation. So you have the statement in your mind, whatever it is. In this case, he doesn't love me. And then you just sit still with it and ask the question, is it true? And then let whatever happens, happen. Whatever thoughts pop in your mind, you may have different thoughts of what happened in the past or the present, maybe images. It may be able to create doubts. It may just reaffirm what you think. The key is just to be open and to allow things to take place. And so just sit with that for a moment in time with that question. Is it true? And just allow whatever happens to happen. And after a period of time, then I want you to notice how you feel inside. Notice how you're thinking. Notice how your body feels. And also then, as you notice what you notice, think about that statement again. And what's changed? Has anything changed? Because then we come to the next question. Can you absolutely know it's true? Can you absolutely know it's true? Now let's say for sake of argument, the answer is, well, after you've asked the first question, is it true? Your answer is yes. Well, again, just sit there and meditate on it. And if the answer was no, do the same thing. So just sit there and meditate on, can you absolutely know that it's true? And just notice what you notice. Whatever comes up is great. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. The key is to just ask the question and allow your mind to come up with the answers. Because this is not about me being the therapist. When I work with private clients, this is about them becoming the teacher. They are going to come up with the answers. They are going to teach themselves a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving, a new way of experiencing life. So just go with it. Just ask the question and sit quietly with that, like a meditation. Can you absolutely know that this is true? And just let it happen. And then, again, once you've done that, when you got to a certain point, just notice how you're feeling inside. Notice what's different. Notice how that's different from how you were a few minutes ago when you first started this process, if you are even different from that. And then think about that old problem again. What's changed? What's shifted? Have you got new perspectives? Maybe you haven't got new perspectives. It doesn't matter. Just go with the process. And then we come to the third question. How do you react when you believe that thought? And in this one, again, it's a meditative question. Just sit there quietly with it. And I want you to notice how you emotionally feel. Is your heart rate increased? Do you have sort of churning in your stomach? Do you feel tense or relaxed or whatever? Just notice how you react when you believe the thought. And the question is in there, what would happen if you didn't believe the thought? So just sit with that and notice what happens. And after a while, just ask yourself the question, well, what if you didn't believe this thought? How would you react then? How would that be different? How would that change your experience? And just notice how that feels inside when you've asked that question. And then question 4 is, who would you be without that thought? And again, just sit quietly with that and ask yourself the question, who would you be without that thought? And think about what you'd be like over the next few days or for the next few weeks or for the next few months or years if you didn't have that thought anymore. If that thought was no longer bothering you at all, who would you be without that thought? What would you be doing? How would that affect your life? What new perspectives would that open up for you? Because what we want to do is begin to start looking at things differently. What new perspectives can you look at that situation when you go through all those questions? So start just thinking about who would you be without that thought? Because the world is what you think it is. So who would you be without that thought? And then what you can do is to begin to flip it. So once you've been through that, you could flip that. Flip the original question. So when we go back to the example of he doesn't love me, what if you flip that round and ask the question in a different way, or stated it as a different way? He does love me. What about if you flipped it another way? I don't love him. What if you flipped it another way and said, I don't love myself? And just meditate on all those questions. And what's going to happen is if you actually do this process, then you're going to start rewiring your brain to think of things differently. You are literally going to rewire your brain to think of things differently from this moment on. And what's going to happen is then in the future when stuff happens, and let's face it, it is going to happen, there is going to be stuff happening in your life, which some of it you're not going to like. And you are going to come back at the end of the day and hold your head and go, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. They didn't do this, and he didn't do that, or she didn't do that. And you're going to start forming negative beliefs again. What's going to happen is you're going to mentally start asking these questions yourself. because you'll have wired this in and it will take place automatically. You won't have to actually sit down and really do it. You'll just, straight away as something comes up in your head, when you come up with a limiting belief, straight away your mind will go, is this really true? Is this true? Do I absolutely know this is true? And then notice how you feel, how do you react? And then what would you be? Who would you be without that thought? All this will start happening automatically because you will have trained your brain to do that. There's something in neurology called Hebb's law, which means neurons that fire together wire together. And so if you continue to do this on a daily basis, anytime you get a negative thought comes up in your head, or a negative limiting belief of, my anxiety is caused by this, my depression is caused by that, run it through this process. And what you're going to find is that you are going to rewire your neurology to think in a different way, and new perspectives will open up and you'll be able to see things differently. You'll be able to rise up and look down on those problems, and they will no longer bother you in the same way as they used to. So that's my goal for you. Just practice this. Like everything else, it's not just do it once and you're done. Practice this. Do this for 5-10 minutes a day for the next 30 days. Write and identify the limiting beliefs. Go through this process and notice how quickly you can change the way you think about things that in the past you used to think were a problem, but now no longer are. And ask yourself, who will you be without this thought? So it's Barry Neal again here, signing off from hypnosisessex.com. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. You can contact me either through my website, my Facebook page, or even leaving comments here on Facebook, or on YouTube, sorry. So just leave a comment, get in contact, let me know how well you do. Until the next time, I'll see you soon. So take care, remember to do the 4 questions, remember to practice, and change your life.